The last one did at 9:30.
Heard from Ann?
No. Yes. Yes. Lower than. Thank you.
Ready?
Would also
I believe so. Let me just double check. Yep, you're good to go.
All right, folks, let's go. Changes to the agenda this morning. We need to add 3 bond resolutions that Rick needs, and Rick needs to be out of here fairly quickly for a training session. So we'll do that.
TCAT review, a meeting we draft on the triennial review with TCAT.
All the more important. So we'll add those early, and then Dwight needs to be gone. So we're going to take his things fairly early, right after we do Rick. And right after we have public comment, if we have any this morning. I have a blue card from Ashley Miller. Would you like to speak to us? Come up to a microphone. You can either stand up or sit down at one, whichever's better.
I'm Ashley Miller and I live at 126 Sears Street. And good morning.
Good morning.
It's nice to be here in person after years of being parked behind my screen. I would like to address the issue of the future of the once elegant, now dilapidated, but could be rehabilitated historic house at 408 North Tioga Street. The importance of its preservation is reflected in its inclusion in the DeWitt Park Historic District. Under Mike Lane's leadership in 2015, the Tompkins County Legislature adopted a comprehensive plan to reflect the needs and desires for the county's future. One of these was to support affordable housing, which the county has so admirably done with their agreement to sell the Sears Street lots of the Baker parcel to Ithaca Neighborhood Housing Services for the creation of affordable housing. This act restores a neighborhood that was decimated when Dr. Baker demolished 3 houses and a garage for what turned out to be an unpermitted parking lot. As everyone knows, this country is in the midst of an affordable housing crisis. And as low and moderate income county residents well know, we're suffering from our own affordable housing crisis. Yes, in the last 5 to 10 years, there has been a building boom in the city of Ithaca, but of market rate apartments. Because of their steep construction costs, greatly increased by 3 years of pandemic-related supply chain issues, their developers must charge equally steep rents. We in Tompkins County are lucky to have INHS, an acknowledged countrywide leader in the affordable housing field. Beside building new residences, as they will be doing on Sears Street, they also renovate and bring back deteriorated properties to create affordable housing. If this worthy organization is interested, here's another chance for the county to put into practice one of the worthy goals of their comprehensive plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments this morning. We'll be talking about 408 later in the agenda. Do we have anyone else for public comment this morning? And were those folks going to come that you talked about? All right. Well, if they come later, we'll let them talk to us.
I just want to say they're getting ready for tonight. I think was it last night or tonight, but the Historic Ithaca Awards they're preparing for that.
Okay. I don't have any formal chair's report this morning. We're going to go right to Rick's 3 bond resolutions. Let's start with Resolution A, which we've just added to the agenda. A bond resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $3,676,000 of serial bonds and notes to the County of Tompkins to pay a portion of the cost of reconstructing the Podunk Road Bridge located within the county. I assume Ann's going to move that one. Is there a second? Second by Randy. Rick?
This is one of 3 resolutions that we're asking for authorization to float bonds or bans next February in order to get them into the queue for the legislature to adopt these in the second meeting of October. We had to rush and get these 3 before the F&I committee this month. We couldn't wait till next month because that meeting is after the last legislative meeting in October. So that's why we speeded this up almost a whole month to get this to you for review and for your acceptance. This first one, Jeff had a great hand in putting together with our bond attorney, Bill Marquardt. I thank him for his effort on working on this with us. And this is for the Podunk Road Bridge.
Ann?
Thanks. I spoke with Jeff about this, Jeff Smith, and this is a steel deck bridge, an older, very old steel deck bridge, and it will go through historic preservation evaluation, to see if there's any parts thereof that can be salvaged for. And if it would be, it's a very narrow, so it would be something that would be, you take the parts similar to what we've done to another bridge, is possibly use them somewhere else. But we'll talk more about this as it gets going, but it's actually an unsafe bridge where there's been a lot of accidents. So I'm glad to see this is on the queue.
Anyone else? Randy?
Yes, I thought for some reason though, a good portion of this was being funded by the state. Was I mistaken in that, or?
No, this is mostly funded by the state, and we'll actually be only floating the first year cost. I forget what that amount is, $660?
We pay 100%.
Jeff, you need to be in a microphone.
Oh,
Jeff.
Sorry. In these type of projects, it's a Bridge New York project. We pay 100% upfront, and then it's reimbursed. So we have to have the full amount of the estimated amount of the project able to pay in the first part.
So we bond this for how many years?
It's a 1-year ban. So it's just a note, and this gives us the upfront money so that we can pay for the first year design costs. The second year will be the actual construction. But we're asking for authorization for the whole amount so we don't have to come back again next year and ask for an additional amount. But it goes out as a ban, which is a 1-year note. And then your second year construction costs will be another ban for the remainder of the project, after which, as Jeff said, we'll slowly get reimbursed by the state for most of the project, 95% of the project. So in the long run, our county's local portion is only 5% of this number.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, anything else? Let's do a roll call on the bond resolutions. Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I'm yes, so that's unanimous. The next one is Resolution B, a bond resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $1 million serial bonds and notes of the County of Tompkins to pay the cost to acquire certain machinery and apparatus for construction and maintenance. Someone want to move that one? Lee? Seconded by Amanda. I see this is, has a list of equipment that's going to be bonded for, which I found interesting. $231,000 for a front end loader, $146,200 for a bulldozer, $350 for a street sweeper, $150 for a flowboy trailer, and $122,800 for an asphalt roller. Doesn't take too many pieces to add up to $1 billion, does it? Any discussion on this one? Randy?
Is all this cost the county's cost?
Yes. And this is the first year of a program that Jeff and Lisa have come up with to fund heavy equipment and or large vehicles that the road department uses, which is separate from the Green Fleet Vehicle Program that Terry and the planning department does. As they put that together over a 5-year period, you're very familiar with the Green Fleet program. We realized that there were certain elements in our rolling stock that didn't fit that. And so we came up with a separate program spread out over a number of years where highway department could make these heavy equipment purchases from its own capital project program, which is shown in your 5-year capital plan. So this is the first year, $1 million in the first year to buy these specific vehicles in an ongoing capital program, but it is all county cost.
And how long is the bond for this one go for?
15 years.
Equipment's gonna last that long, Jeff?
That's just a bond rate, right? That's the time of frame. It may, some may not, but there'll be a residual value as we roll newer used equipment back. It'll take less to purchase new, things like that. So it's
Okay.
we have a 5-year plan. And if I may, this is a little bit of my budget presentation now, and it's a little bit of advance. And the switch you'll see in my budget, there's reduction. Traditionally, in the last number of years that I've prepared budgets, highways always had a over target request in an attempt to stay close to our 5-year equipment needs. That's what pushed the over target request, because we didn't have enough within our budget, and we were working on different ways, strategies to address that. This is the way that we're deciding to address it, is through a 5-year capital plan and acquiring the funding that were needed to stick with our 5-year plan this way, rather than have it within the highway budget. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anything else? Let's vote. Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
And I'm yes. The third resolution, a bond resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $7,098,000 of serial bonds and notes of the county of Tompkins, New York, to pay a portion of the cost of various capital improvement projects at various county facilities. And my understanding is this is our green initiative that we're working on. Someone want to move this one? Ann? Seconded by Amanda. Anyone want to talk about this one? This is the one we had to, we've talked about it in this committee before about the funding. Go ahead, Lisa.
The only small point of clarification to make is at our last meeting, we had discussed, and thank you, put forth the resolution to try to lock in the price. We had a placeholder in the capital plan of 7.5 million. But when the bids came in and the quote came in, it was slightly less than that. Well, quite a bit less than that. And this figure, 7.098 million, is the exact figure that we're working with from Johnson Controls. So some good news there.
$400,000 is good news.
Yeah.
I'd like to thank Rel for rushing this last night with Bill Marquardt, the bond attorney, to get the final numbers input into the resolution. The attachments that you see here go with the EAF form or environmental assessment form. Terry and the planning department put all that together for us. And so with Terry's help, Arel's help, and bond counsel, they were able to pull this together in about a week for this meeting for you today.
Okay, Randy.
Is this for 15 years as well, or is this longer than 25? Or
There's two segments. If you turn to the second page under A and B, and under the A section, which is the biggest section, over $7 million, it's a 25-year term. And then a smaller portion, the $60,000 component, is for a 15-year term.
and is this for the second half of phase one, or is the first half of phase one? So phase one already in the budget someplace else, or?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so this is to fill the total 14 million and something. I wasn't very happy. I know Johnson Controls. I've worked with them. Really unhappy with the price came back double. But they're probably the only people that we work with, correct? So they're the only ones that bid on it, or?
Arel and Terry, could you speak to?
So the
$1 billion company, it seems like a lot of money.
right, and we've known from the beginning of the project that it would be a lot of money to do the project. The geothermal, I think we've indicated before, we increased the scope of it. It was going to be a partial geothermal to do a portion of the public works facility. We looked at what it would take to do the entire facility. And so we increased the scope of that project in order to also get state funding that Terry was working on. We also moved up a project that was on phase two, which was the rooftop units at the library. Those are 22 years old. And those were in phase two, which they were 2.5 years away. So we said that needs to actually move forward because we've had multiple failures of each of the rooftops over the last couple of years. So that was added to phase one, which increased the cost of phase one. And then we also looked at upgrading all of the controls at all the buildings that have HVAC controls on them. And that was also in addition to the scope, which would have been accomplished in phase two, but we wanted that done in phase one in order to be able to better optimize and control the new systems that we're putting on, both at here at Public Works through geothermal, at mental health through a VRF system, and also at the library with rooftop units. So, aside from increase in scope, which was a portion of that increase, also just material costs, labor costs, and escalation affected those numbers. This is being done through a cooperative procurement. So we've been able to work and negotiate a lot of the costs with Johnson Controls. And it's a turnkey project. So we're not involved, although we are involved in review of designs and engineering, we're not involved in really the management as well as the design of the project, which also makes the project go much faster and allows us as a county to have quite a bit of control as we're going through the project versus if we did this via a bid spec type of a project.
I was reading an article about the life expectancy of equipment, and it's actually reduced over the last 10, 15 years. 25 years might seem a long to me, but we'll see where it goes.
Right.
Lee?
Not that it makes a big difference at this stage of the game. It's more of a question for Rick. From where we started planning this to now, bond rates, is that affected your costs appreciably with the changes here in recent months?
Certainly has. You can see by watching the market every day how short-term and long-term rates are both going up. The 2 years at its highest level now in 15 years. And of course, your bond costs will be higher than what we've paid over the last 6, 7, 8 years. But we still feel we have a comfortable margin in the capital plan. We always have a buffer of about 1.5%. I think we have 4% for long-term bonds now, maybe somewhere around there. And 3% for short-term notes, but I think we have it covered in the capital plan, but you can only see them go higher as you see what's happening in the economy and interest rates continually climb. The Fed's going to next week mark it up another 75 basis points probably. And we're in those times now where it's been a long time. A lot of adults that I work with have never been, haven't even been in the workforce for when there was a really high inflation rate or high bond rates. I unfortunately can remember 2 or 3 times when we've had this experience. So you will see higher interest rates probably than what we've paid than any over the last 6 or 8 years.
If we're committed to doing this, it's not in our interest to delay this at this point. So.
And again, things can change between now. The actual floating of this bond will be in February. It actually sells at the end of January. So there's quite a few months between. A lot of things can happen between now and January, good and bad in the economy. But, you know, it's not like we're going out today to market for this. It won't be until the last week in January till we actually sell these bands and bonds.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to vote? Oh, I'm sorry, Ann had her hand up. That's right.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick, for getting these 3 to us, and today. I know it takes a lot of work for you and your department and others to get this before us. I also want to thank Arel and Terry for all their work on the green initiatives, the green facilities. And I know it must not be easy to come before us and tell us that the costs are going to be higher. And we know those are, out of your control. But as, was said, it's not going to help us to wait on this. Tying in the library, I'm assuming those are heat pumps on the roof, right? So tying in those when they're at their, with 22 years with constant use, probably past their life expectancy. And so I'm happy that we're going forward with this, not just because of the green initiatives, but also we would be paying more to replace systems. And then if we wanted to replace them again later, it really would make sense to wait. So I think now's the time to get going on this. So thank you very much.
Suddenly made me think when you just talked about the library of solar panels. Did we have an opportunity, instead of just replacing them, to lease the solar like we have on other facilities?
We're not going to replace the solar.
Are we talking the solar on the library?
The heat pumps.
I'm sorry, I thought we were talking the solar panels. My mistake. All right, let's vote. Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Lee?
Yes.
I vote yes. Anything else, Rick?
No. I'll tune in and listen from my office to hear the rest of the meeting, but thank you for putting these in the front.
You're behind pins and needles. Thank you. All right, let's go right to Dwight. He also needs to be out of here at some point, early. Dwight Mangle.
Hi. I have a very short presentation. Mike asked me if I would discuss Tomtran. And for those who may not know what that was, it was the actually comprehensive public transportation program broadly planned that the county did. Started the planning for it initially back in 1976. It came to become a program in 1981 and 1982, and it was used to, the county applied for funding from the Appalachian Regional Commission. They had a special solicitation for rural transportation broadly defined. I was told later by them, and after we submitted our final report on our program, that they only made 2 awards, and ours succeeded. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm going to show you a page from the application, which summarizes what we were trying to do. And then I'm going to show you a very brief summary page of the results. And then I'm going to show you photos. And you can all have access to the original documents and everything. Let me share my screen. So TomTran was multimodal. And in 1980, that was not a common way of looking at rural transportation. Pretty much operators of either public transit or any other program, everybody was in a silo. And that wasn't how we looked at it. And I will say that the plan was created by David Arbite, who was the senior planner. I was a new planner at the time. I assisted David in putting together the program. After the award was made, David left to move to Austin, Texas, and I became the project manager to implement it. But there was a very broad consensus and a very broad coalition of actors in our county who really collaborated on putting not only the ideas together, but the implementation. And it really used everybody's strengths. And there's many people to a site. In particular, I would really need to cite Bill Wendt, the former Cornell Director of Transportation and Facilities, who was a leader all through the long period of time that he was in our transportation development for at least 15 plus years. Really excellent job. So, TomTran. We noticed and discussed in the goals of this project that 55,000 out of 86,000 people living in the county had really no access to public transportation or transportation alternatives to driving. This was a time period of high inflation. All of our budget estimates included an estimate of inflation during the year of 10% at that time. And gas prices were at the highest level they had been because we were in the second energy crisis of the reduction of supply of oil. So we were coming out of that, and the county was extremely aware that many rural residents from inside Tompkins County and in the neighboring counties comprised the majority of our workforce. And we needed to offer effective options for people to get to and from work, to and from services, to and for all of this valuable public use, so forth. So, fixed route buses. I'll discuss that later. Jitney service. What the heck is jitney service? Well, jitney service we saw as a privately operated like van services. And we actually had some. Continuation and increased promotion of the carpool program. The county, the first response the county had to the energy crisis was, let's get a carpool program. I will just tell you that there was no computerization at that time, but that was it. Van pooling was if an employer would basically lease, or if a group of people up to like 10 people, 8 to 10 people could lease a van and utilize it for a large carpool. Utilization of public school buses to transport TC3 students. One of the things when we're looking at this was all of the school districts send students to BOCES, and then the Dryden School District bus returns empty to Dryden. And the idea was, well, that's close to TC3. What if we got community college students to BOCES somehow, and they could all get on to this empty school bus otherwise and go to TC3. Increasing park and ride. We needed this at locations of where we were going to have transit, and also where people could come together and carpool. And then there was the number 7, which is in terms of support for the county planning department to have the resources to manage and promote and so forth. All of these services coordinate with Ithaca Transit, which is the city's bus system, Gadabout, which at that time was an all volunteer system. And there was a lot there. It's like having many seeds to plant and seeing what can be developed and grow. So now I'm going to show you a summary of what we have as the results. So from 1980 to 1989, as I said, energy crisis, inflation. So what did we end up doing? We expanded 3 suburban bus routes. Northeast Transit was in the Northeast. Cornell expanded service that went to the airport and more towards, they added a second route that had more coverage in the northeast area. The city used to operate a route to the hospital. We extended that route to nearby residential units. And then it came back to the city. There was a separate collaboration between the county, the town of Ithaca, and Cornell in 1981 to launch East Ithaca Transit. And then we extended that to Eastern Heights. For all of these suburban services, multiple municipalities and the county contributed and invested in the funding for the services. The largest single contributor for all of them was, except for the hospital, for the Northeast and East Ithaca, was Cornell. So they were very much willing to, yes, we need to invest in in this to reduce the amount of cars that are coming into Cornell. So starting rural bus service. We started the Dryden service with 2 buses, and it launched in 1982. We extended it to Groton in 83. Later in the 80s, we added Trumansburg, Newfield, and Lansing. Enfield, service to Enfield actually started with TCAT back in 1998. Rural commuter van service. This is what we call Jitney. We had Caravan, which was from Newark Valley to Ithaca. It served Caroline and Brooktondale. It was operated by a private operator. And early in the 80s, they also operated a service, commuter service from Cortland to Ithaca. And the types of assistance that we provided for them is that I went to Ithaca County and Cortland County and worked with the legislature to have them consider, which they did, and pass resolutions in which they sponsored Tioga Transport, which is the name of the very small company that was doing these services for state aid. And so important. And we supported paratransit service on Gadabout. And frankly, we helped Gadabout to evolve from an all volunteer service to become a formally nonprofit transportation corporation, and hence they would be eligible to receive state aid, and that enabled that agency to dramatically grow its services. We also assisted Cornell University to, the county has sponsored Cornell to receive state aid. So at the time when the city had their own system, Cornell had their own system, the county had its own system. We were looking to make sure that everybody could have access to the state operating assistance for eligible programs. We did work on carpooling, van pooling, and the extended use of buses. I would just, some of the things that first seem small, but then have great ramifications is that with this grant, I was able to buy the first 2 microcomputers in county government. And so we had spreadsheets, we had everything, and it's extraordinarily useful. And that gave us opportunities for doing marketing that otherwise would not happen, and for planning and writing and everything that would be otherwise very difficult. We were also, the county was the first to buy buses with air conditioning. Neither the city or Cornell had that. And I was able to justify to the county board at that time that air conditioning was more defensible than heating, because individuals can wear enough clothes to be warm on the bus, but they can't remove enough clothing to be cool on the bus and have it be socially acceptable. And they laughed and they bought that, and they had us buy buses with air conditioning. And frankly, there were people who would pass up a city bus and get on a county bus in the summer because it was much more comfortable. In general, we outsourced our operations and we managed marketing and services. So now,
Dwight, we don't want to run you out of time. Are we going to get into how we became TCAT at some point here?
No, actually, okay. We're only doing the 80s.
Oh, okay.
That is the 90s.
We'll have to have volume 2 at some future meeting.
Very, 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 very much so. So, all right. Tomtran, early pictures. I like this one. I told Mike I had it, so here it is. 1981, test run of a Tomtran bus. These are the members of the county legislature. Also, Mike, who was mayor of the village, Frank Ligori, who was the planning commissioner, and TCAT president Hussein Bahar. That's a really great photo. And this was what it looked like in front of Woolworths at that time. And the county was in the transit business. And we even, for $20 on Ridership Appreciation Day, for $20, you could get 2 poets for $20 on a bus ride to entertain people going home, or Hank Roberts with his cello going to Dryden, and a guitarist. And we gave everybody pencils. So that was our marketing program. And this is our first really real transit bus, meaning a 12-year transit bus that the county was able to buy. These buses are basically a transit bus body on a school bus chassis, and hence they were much more affordable at that time. And this is some pictures of the van service. Charlie Chaplin is the owner of Tioga Transport. So I will send you links where you can get access to documents, you can get access to more photos and everything. So this does lay the, it lays the groundwork for first creating our transit facility, which we did. So the city, the county, Cornell, with separate systems. Got a grant through the assistance with Senator D'Amato to build the Ithaca Tompkins Transit Center. And we built it, and the impetus for doing this was in 1989 when the temperature fell in December 54 degrees in 2 hours and basically disabled many of Cornell's buses and the county's buses because we were stored outside, and our fuel gelled and we couldn't take people home one day. And Bill sent this little note to Bernie Carpenter at the city, to myself, and others saying, can't we do something about this? And that was the impetus of beginning to do the facility. So, Mike, I respect your desire. I'd be very happy to come back and give a 10-minute thing about TCAT, but TCAT came third. So without the facility and without us all living together, it would have taken much more of an effort to have a need for TCAT. So I will stop here.
Right, thank you for that. I think it's really important. There's been a lot of discussions about TCAT recently. and where we go, including the possibility we were talking about a couple of years ago about a new facility. So I think it's important that we know where we came from, and there's no one in county government that knows more about it than you do. And we thank you for all your efforts. And these folks, these pictures, you only saw part of them here today, and they're fun to take a look at that Dwight's put together. Thank you for that, Dwight.
Hey, Mike.
Lee,
could I comment for a second?
Sure can.
Not to delay things. I know you always point out the conflicts, and I think I'll point one out that's 40 years old. My first exposure to county government was as an intern to the Tompkins County Board of Representatives in 1980 and 81. And there were a group of us.
Was that when your dad was on?
Just before. And we came from various high schools and worked many months with what was then the Board of Representatives, now the legislature. We were assigned to Dwight, who was a new planner. And so here's the conflict. I got to work with a group of people under Dwight's tutelage, doing surveys throughout the county to figure out where the best bus routes should be implemented. And so I go back a few years and I appreciate the history that Dwight's put in there. And when my dad ran for this seat in 1981 and then subsequently years later, his theme was buses, bridges, blacktop. And so as I sit here on the F&I committee, I'm channeling Dad from 40 years, and I appreciate the work that Dwight had. He had quite a vision among the many people he mentioned there, Mr. Wendt, Mr. Ligori, and others. And we have a lot to what we have today, and where we started is really quite a story. And I appreciate what you did here today. Thanks, Dwight.
Thank you.
Anyone else before we move on to Dwight's resolutions? Ann.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quick, thank you for the presentation, and especially the pictures of you and Mike from the 70s. I moved here in 1984 and to Trumansburg and was taking TomTran, and it's hard to imagine that was pretty much brand new at the time. I really don't know, and the buses were pretty packed back then, so it's hard to have imagined that was new and that wasn't around for quite a while. So thank you for the history and for all your work you've done in transportation.
Okay, Dwight, we've got two resolutions. I understand that we're going to withdraw the second one. Is that correct?
Yes. That is correct. We will withdraw the one with the position and just do with the one with the grant.
Let's go ahead and move the authorization for Federal Transit Administration Section 5339E. I guess that's a C.
C.
Okay, low and no emissions vehicle program grant for Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit. Someone want to move that? Ann. Seconded by Lee. Discussion. You want to say anything about it, Lee? You want to say anything about it, Dwight?
Yes. TCAT did an exceptional job receiving a competitive grant award from the FTA. This is the grant. It was announced on August 16, and the role of the county here is to apply for this funding in the FTA's grant management system. And so we're going through that process now, and it needs to be authorized by the county.
Okay, we're ready to vote. Randy?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Anything else, Dwight, before we let you go?
That's it.
Thank you for coming here this morning.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Let's move on to our county administrator's report.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Under my report is moving forward from the discussion at the last committee meeting regarding the potential sale of 408 North Tioga Street. And I wanted to just make everyone aware that prior to considering any sale of county property, we follow the land transaction policy, which is in the policy manual. So between last meeting and this meeting, in the county office, we went through a number of those steps involving a number of different departments, including planning department, reviewing the property for natural, cultural, historic resources, making sure the environmental review is completed and the seeker documents are in place from when prior transactions on this property. The finance department, assessment department, and county attorney all have weighed in and played a role in looking at this property, and then bringing forth for your consideration then the determination that this property is no longer needed for public use, which is the first resolution, which would need to be voted on, and then the authorizing the sale of the property. So those are the two resolutions before you for consideration and discussion today.
And that is, as we requested at our last meeting, we had discussion about this. There was some difference of opinion. Some folks thought maybe we should deconstruct the house. Some thought it should stay. I think there was general feeling that the property probably should be marketed. Some of us felt that it should be marketed with the county keeping control of the land by having a ground lease sale. I received an email yesterday from Historic Ithaca asking us to please, if we sell it, to make sure any potential buyer understands that this is in a historic district and would be subject to the requirements of whatever rehabilitation the house has of the Ithaca Landmarks Preservation Council requirements down there. So we'll want to be sure to do that. And I thought that was a good reminder for us. We're not, because we're the county and a larger municipality than the city, we aren't controlled as much by that, although we try to follow the city's lead on things like that. But certainly a private developer or owner would have to abide by the city's zoning and landmarks preservation requirements. So I would just mention that. I also announced at our last legislature meeting that we would be talking about this and invited any other legislators who wanted to come in and talk about it to be here. And we have Greg Mezzi in Chambers, and we have Dan Klein on Zoom this morning. So if either of them want to talk about this, they're certainly more than welcome to do that.
I could move it if you want to get it on the floor.
All right, let's move the first one, which is the resolution determining that 408 North Tioga Street in the city of Ithaca is no longer needed for public use. Ann's moved it. Is there a second for that? I'm seeing a Randy's hand for a second. Amanda.
Yeah, thanks. I was sorry to miss the discussion at the last F&I meeting. And I read through the minutes and I got a general sense. I guess I would just ask my colleagues if it was already discussed or what your thoughts are about what we would do if we sell off the red house. What are folks thinking that we would do with the rest of that property? Would it be solely a parking lot? Would we build something else on it? I just don't know what the thoughts are. So I'd love to hear people's answers.
Lee?
Well, I'm going to pick up on that, and here's my problem. I don't agree that that we should be passing a resolution that it's no longer needed for county use. I think to some degree it's premature, and here's why. The county purchased the entire area as a potential site for county use, possibly a county government building. We've already carved off Sears Street, good use, but a substantial area is gone. You look at this, and if we were to sell what is outlined in this package, you're taking 60 feet plus for the parcel the house is on. You've got 10 feet to the north. Conceivably, that's partially part of the parking. The reality is you need 20 feet if you're going to continue to use those as parking spots. I would assume that the county is going to leave whoever purchases this additional access to get to the parking to have around there. So you're going to have another 20 feet to the north. That's for your driveway that you're going to have to maintain access to. By the time we get done with easements and the transfer of that property, you're effectively leaving less than 60 feet frontage on North Tioga Street for potential use going forward. And essentially you're carving out over a quarter of what's remaining of the property. There's a significant investment that's gone into having this available as an option for the county moving forward and for potential center of government or other county uses. We've, from a tactical standpoint, by taking this action, we've foreclosed numerous options for what we may be able to do in the future. We've invested over a couple $1 million and more coming. It's a pretty expensive staging area, and it's limited. You know, you're foreclosing doing anything with this property moving forward. You can't build much on what's going to be left, and I think that it essentially takes this area off the table for anything practical moving forward. If that property is conveyed and you do it in a manner that respects access to the property that's being conveyed. So I can't support this. I think it's a too premature decision, and I agree. The house is going to be expensive. Trying to maintain it or do what you need to. And please don't question my bona fides from a historical standpoint. I respect that. I'm the village historian, and I've argued to keep a lot of historical structures over the years, but this is not a good move from the county standpoint, in my view.
Ann's next.
Thank you. I think from a couple of different avenues, the way that I look at this, as far as looking at the building, having gone through it a number of times, and talking with folks from Historic Ithaca, and also with my experience as a home inspector, leaving the building, if we're not going to do anything with it in the near future, I would. That's why I am for selling it on for somebody else to take care of. We would have to put significant amount of money in this. A vacant property is open for vandalism. It's open, you know, I know Rel and constantly working at trying to keep the building safe. Water, critters, other things. It's not going to, the house is deteriorating sitting there, and any empty building is deteriorating very quickly. And we've sat on this for how many years have we owned this house? 3 years now? 3 years. And if you've seen other buildings, when you drive by other properties, it doesn't take long. And this is deteriorating. The neighbors, I've heard some information from different neighbors that they're seeing it deteriorate as it's sitting there. This is in a historic area. I would say, let somebody take care of it soon. That, we don't have any immediate plans, and I guess I know we don't have anything set in stone, but I really believe that if we're going to build a center of government, it's not going to be there. That's going to be over on the other corner of this block. So and the rest of the property right now, I would see at least maintaining it for parking for our county employees. I would actually see that for the long term. I think a lot of people disagree with me that they would want to see housing there, but we have an issue trying to get employees to it's very expensive to park down here. It's very difficult to park downtown. So I think that's a benefit that we can keep to our employees. So I would like us to do something, I want to say quickly, but it's been 3 years. So let's do something and not let it go through another winter.
Okay. So the time they haven't talked yet first. Fine. Let's do Greg, then Randy, then Amanda.
I'm good if you let members of the committee speak. I'll speak after them if that.
Okay. Go ahead, Amanda.
Okay, thanks. I mean, and I agree with some of what Annie said. I feel like we need to make a decision and go forward. I feel like exactly, we can't just keep, doing nothing and leaving this property, well, particularly this house, I guess I was pretty clear about the old dental building because that was literally falling apart. So that felt much clearer to me. This feels like, while expensive, it is possible to restore this building. And, hearing all these budget presentations lately, and Mike keeps asking about space, and, if we could renovate this, put a department in there, it's only a block away, use the rest of the property for parking, I think that's reasonable. I know it's hard to come to a consensus with the group, but I guess if we decide not to sell it, we need to have another plan. Like, we can't just say, okay, we're not going to sell it and then let it sit for 3 more years. Like, I think it kind of all goes together. So I don't know if that was very clear, but.
Okay, then Randy.
As I look at this, and if we hadn't spent $3 million on property right over here, I don't think it'd be a big decision. We'd want to keep it. But we've invested $3 million here. And so my assumption is that that's where the new center of government buildings would be. That's the plan, I think. So I don't see that as a need for that space. The building itself, and Meryl talked about this quite a bit, that the amount of work that need to be done to even make it suitable for our use is substantial. And it probably more than what the building would be worth when you're done, because it's a lot of money. And I think we need to respect historic Ithaca and the fact that it is an historic district. And I think that's a job for somebody else. I just don't like it sitting. I've never been a fan of governments owning buildings that sit forever. Bates, the property in Bates Drive drove me nuts for years. That just sat there and the work wasn't being done to it. So I was never a fan of that. I don't think we should spend money on rehabbing a building like that. We can use money for other things that would really help people versus spending money on a building. What Lee said makes sense if we didn't know the plan for the center of government building, which is here. So, and I agree with Ann. I think that parking is going to be a big deal, and it will work for that. I have some issues with how the property is going to be sold and what land would go with this building. But as far as use for the county, I don't see it. So. Greg?
Yeah, appreciate letting me speak today, Mike. So thank you. I am fully on board with what Lee said. I think it's a little short-sighted to sell this now. I think we don't know the plans for the center of government for the other corner, because as you know, Mike, as you said yesterday, you know, when someone referenced that, we don't know what that will be. I think it's incredibly limiting to parcel that off and have parking in a residential neighborhood. I think we heard from a community member who had emphasized a desire for more affordable housing, which I think if you remember Jay's presentation, his budget presentation, you know, we need more affordable housing. We may also need space for a county building of some sort. I think, you know, I'd like to know what we can do in terms of deconstructing or demolishing the building. I would prefer deconstruction to save historical elements. But, you know, maybe if we do anything or redevelopment on that site, we commit to the community to build that in the style of, you know, something that fits with the character of the historic nature of the neighborhood. It is, I think, also too is it the last parcel in the historic? It's right on the edge. So there is an element. I guess when this comes to the legislature, I can't support selling this. I think it's short-sighted. I don't think we know enough about that building. I think that this was purchased for a specific purpose. I would be in favor of deconstructing that building, and then also studying that space and saying what could we do, right? Is there a childcare center opportunity for the community? Is there housing opportunity? Is there additional office space opportunity? I also think to have the privilege to have such a large parking lot is also something we should really question, because would really any other business purchasing this land be able to put up a parking lot in, you know, a dense part of the city? So I do have some challenges with that, especially around our green initiatives, right? And obviously we have county employees that drive vehicles and need to come to work. But that also goes back to the question I raised early on, is why are we putting a center of government in a place that's incredibly inaccessible to get to with vehicles? And we have such challenges with parking and cars and things like that. So I still think that there's, to Lee's point, more to be looked at in this. And I think selling this off and saying that it's no longer needed, I think if the committee decides to do that, and then ultimately the legislature does, we've essentially rendered the rest of the parcel useless. And we've just committed to the community to have a nice T-shaped parking lot in the middle of a residential area. So I would encourage you all to not rush into this. I think it's a little penny wise but pound foolish. So hopefully we can come up with a better solution than just getting rid of this and limiting ourselves. And I would encourage it to be deconstructed so we didn't have the carrying costs, and then also it opens up a lot more opportunity for what we could put on that parcel. And then also in the long run, I think, and maybe Jay could, you know, if that's a vacant parcel, you know, I understand that there may potentially be greater value, right, to not have to deal with that if we were to need to determine that it wasn't worthwhile keeping either. So those are just my thoughts, but I would encourage you not to support these resolutions.
Dan Klein.
Thank you. I don't know what to do about this one. I don't know how I'll vote when it comes to the legislature. The only comment I wanted to make is one that I've made as part of my comments on the other parts of what's happened on this site in terms of the Sear Street housing and in terms of the dental building being taken down, and now this, which is that we're doing things piecemeal without a plan. And I think that's the wrong way to go. I think we should have an overall plan, and then we'll know whether this building fits in with that plan or not. So that's my comment. I know it's not extremely constructive because, you know, that doesn't say what we should be doing today with this building. And I'm also not coming up with a plan, but that is my belief that we should come up with an overall plan first and then execute each step of that plan. Thank you.
I'd comment that years ago when we first looked at the property that we eventually bought, that was owned by the dental practice, we thought probably we would sell off the red house if we bought it, and we would probably rehabilitate the dental building and use that for office space. There was never any discussion about selling off part of it for housing. This legislature did make a decision last year to do that on Sears Street. That decision's been made. I just won't say anything more about that. We also made a decision to deconstruct the dental building. I think if we'd gone in there and done some work immedately instead of letting it continue to deteriorate, we might have been able to save that. That was my opinion, but I was staunchly outvoted on that. Now we're talking about the red house again. For us to rehabilitate that house would be, as Ann said, very, very difficult. You'd have to put an elevator in. You probably have to put it on the outside of the house in order to have an elevator in it. You'd have to put in sprinkler systems. You would have to, I can't even imagine all the things we would have to do to bring it up to code before we could allow employees to be in those spaces. I don't think that keeping that is an option, but I do think that if we do decide to sell it, we ought to keep the land under it, even if it's on a ground lease for quite a number of years, because that will give us some option. Also, it means we don't have to sell off a chunk for housing, or for parking, or the driveway. They can just have the easement over that to park and to drive to the back of and side of the building, whoever owns it. Lee, I hear every word you're saying, and Greg, I understand what you're saying as well. But it's been, if we keep it, how much money are we going to allocate to mothball it? We know we've got other issues with it. If we keep it, if we deconstruct it, there would be asbestos removal and other things to deal with. It would give us that corner of the lot. I'm not in favor of, in the future, selling off this property for daycare centers or more housing or whatever. I think the county needs to keep it. I don't have a problem with there being a parking lot half a block away from our county campus. I don't think that's something that we can need to have any apologies for the use of so many of our county employees. Many of them can't even afford houses in the city of Ithaca, and let alone maybe even in close to the city of Ithaca. They have to commute. And we know about bus system, but as good a bus system as we have, you're only going to get 20 or 30% of the people to take the bus. As long as we do a ground lease and not sell off the land underneath it, I would support this. But I certainly understand the argument not to do it.
Let me ask a question with regard to ground lease. Practically speaking, would anybody lease from us, lease from the county, or invest into that property if there were a potential that the county were going to use it at some point in the future? How much would you put into it if you didn't own the land that was underneath it, and if it were always or going to be an option out there that the county may use it for another purpose at some point? So ground lease for however many years still forecloses the opportunities. You're going to commit to letting some entity be there on that location, invest money, get a return out of it, and still use a substantial part of what's left to have access to it. I'm just looking at this strictly from a stewardship standpoint, the value of the land, the footprint to the county for potential uses in the future. I understand all the other potentials that might be out there, but we're crashing the value of this from a planning standpoint and from a financial standpoint. You're not leaving anything left to do a substantial building project someday down the road.
Amanda.
This is a very interesting conversation. I love everyone's different opinions. I think I just would echo what Dan said, and I have to agree with that. I feel like we're just doing this piecemeal and we need a plan. And if so, I guess one way or the other, if we sell this off or we don't, more pressing if we don't, we need to know what we're doing. Like, what are we going to do with this property over here? What are we going to do with this property? And I think it's time to start having that conversation. I know there's time with the tenants that are still leasing this property, but I think we need to look at the bigger picture. And, this property, whatever form it takes, the parts that we have left is a part of that discussion. So particularly if we don't sell this, I don't think it should continue to sit for 3 more years while we have this conversation. So either then we would deconstruct it or we need to get talking about a plan. So I feel like I just reiterated myself, but that's what we do here.
Forgive me. Randy?
Yes, if we did decide to not sell it, then I would agree with deconstructing. That would make sense, and then keeping the property. But I'd like to hear a refresher from Mero on what it would take to get this building up so it could be used by us.
Okay, so I had shared a spreadsheet, I think a couple of months ago, where we looked at various options, kind of a do nothing option, which was basically continuing to pay utilities, insurance, the fees we're paying, but not really any improvements to the existing building. That was $20,000. Then if we were to do the abatement in the basement only, it would be $49,000. But then if we wanted to renovate it, that was renovation for county use, which would kick in a lot of the code requirements that Mike Lane referred to for ADA access, sprinkler, fire alarm system, mechanical system improvements, roof replacements. That was like 1.17 million to do that. So I agree that having kind of direction for the parcels would be important. What I haven't done is what minimal improvements can we do to the existing building if we need more time, a few years to arrive at that decision. That would be beyond the 20,000. And the things that have seemed to come up that we're aware of, but also from complaints from neighbors is painting of the red house. So in order to do that, we would have to, we're pretty certain because of the age that there's lead in the paint. So we'd have to do lead abatement and then paint the house. There's work that we're going to be doing later this week, if not next week, on the gutters and such to remove, there's some vegetation there. So we need to rent a lift to do that. So we can do some minimal things, and I could come back at the next committee meeting and say what that would cost, well below a renovation cost, but just those things at least would make improvements around the exterior. This had come up over a year ago as well. And at the time, maybe it was a year and a half ago, Jason, I had developed a list of things that we could do, and painting was on there. But my recommendation, and Jason agreed, was that until we really knew whether we were going to hold on to the building or not, we did not want to invest that much money to, abate and paint the house. So at this point, that's really all I need to know. If you want me to come back with kind of short-term cost for, just do some minimal maintenance on the building, mostly exterior, nothing on the inside, I can do that.
Here's going to be my suggestion. We seem to, as Amanda pointed out, there's a lot of different opinions here this morning. We talked about early in the year that we would have special meetings on this issue from time to time because we didn't have the Downtown Facilities Committee anymore. What if we postpone these resolutions and schedule a meeting for next month just to talk about this issue, the downtown area, talk about, as Dan says, some kind of a plan, and invite other members of the legislature who might be interested to attend it as well. I'll just throw that out for a suggestion. Ann?
I could be preempting maybe what Lisa's going to say, so she had her hand up. We're in the middle of budget, and those of us that are on the Community Recovery Grant Committee, there's a lot of work that we're doing. That's an extra thing. For instance, I attended the recovery forum that was hosted. I encourage all legislators to do that because we have a lot of decisions to make about that as a legislature. So I wouldn't be open to doing that, but I would be open to tabling this and then moving up, reviewing our, at our next F&I, making sure we have time to review, what order we're going to do things. And if we need to change things around to help people make a decision on this within, and kind of commit to like, can we do this, decide what to do about this building in the next, say, 6 months, and look at, do we want to commit to whatever people need to know? And maybe a parallel, could we look at, I don't know if Arel could do this, but to look at, could it be deconstructed just as an option? I'm not saying to go there, but just to look at that also so we can make a decision. But I know I don't have much time for extra things right now, extra meetings.
Well, I know you've been saying that since the very first, that you didn't want to have extra meetings, but I don't think one extra meeting would be out of line at this point. How do other folks feel? Lee? Amanda?
I'd like to hear what Lisa has to say.
I'm sorry, Lisa, were you waiting to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Go ahead.
No problem. So I too have been interested to hear everyone's opinions on this parcel. And thinking about the larger scope plan for what the county is trying to accomplish here, I think it is something good to think about. But when I think about it, I guess I'm of the opinion that we do have a plan, or that what this committee was trying to accomplish includes what we had laid out kind of in the decision-making matrix, where we're trying to make multiple decisions at the same time involving the layout of a potential center of government and the space needs study that we conducted among all of our departments, and ascertaining the square footage needs for the future for those departments, with the intention of determining that a center of government will be built on the corner of Tioga and Buffalo. So looking at those square footage needs, I think leads me to think that site, because of the square footage needs, would be best met on that parcel and not on the parcel in the Fall Creek neighborhood. If that's the case, and we're not intending to house any of our departments in the 408 neighborhood or the dental building, or invest more to improve those parcels for county staff, then that leads us to determining the fate of the 408 building, and the discussion around selling with or without a ground lease or deconstruction is you know, it's up to the committee to determine and the legislature to determine. But in terms of the overall plan, I think is, in my mind, is looking at the results of the square footage needs for county office space and the best siting for that. And I think that in my mind leads us to the development on this parcel, on the Buffalo Tioga Street parcel, rather than this parcel.
I don't know whether it's Lee or Amanda first. Whoever had their hand up first.
Understand what you're saying, Lisa. And that takes me to the next step, is the analysis of this over here. And you may run into some costs you don't want to get into, because to build over on this property now means potentially deconstruction of 3 buildings, some of which may have some of the same issues that we have up on North Tioga Street with lead, with asbestos, with other things. You just don't know where this is going to go as you determine those long-term needs. What we're looking at right now, yeah, it probably does make more sense to go on that corner, but I'm not sure that it's going to be cost productive to go on that corner. And I'm not sure a couple of years down the road, we're going to believe that we need that amount of space in this particular area to move forward. And frankly, I still have difficulty investing money and millions of dollars into the city when the city can't get a handle on the public safety issues down here. I wouldn't invest anything at this point till we see some things happen in these local neighborhoods.
Well, that's a different issue.
It's a different issue, but it makes it a longer term proposition.
Make good points, Lee. I think one thing I'm wondering if would help, it seems like legislators aren't all on the same page about if we even want to build a larger building here, because some folks have said, well, we don't know what we're doing. And I wonder if just a basic resolution, which probably would take hours to debate, about, you know, here's our intention is to research and decide if we want to use this property to build a center of government. And then, you know, people could vote no if that's not what they want to do, but at least then we have an intention that's recorded. And because I feel like we're not all on the same page in terms of that most basic thing, even though that's Lisa's understanding. And that's, you know, when we bought this property, that was the idea. So just
it was one person's idea. That was Jason Molino's idea.
Well, but we agreed to buy it, and there was a lot of people who agreed with him.
I agreed.
Yeah. So I don't think that's fair, Mike, but I think that's why I'm suggesting we possibly need to have a vote on our intention. Not that that's exactly what will happen, or, you know, we still need to find out lots of information, but if we're not even on that basic same page, I'm not sure how we can move forward. So.
Okay, we got more agenda today we got to get through. So I sort of agree with everybody. I'm going to go ahead with what I just said. I'm going to suggest that we pull both these resolutions for this agenda, that we could bring them back again. And I'm going to plan on scheduling a meeting for next month with our committee. And
so I'd like to, since I moved this, I think would the procedure be I withdraw it?
Yeah, I think that would be
rather
proper.
than table it, withdraw it.
Just postpone it, or you could table it.
Well, I was just thinking withdraw it. Tabling it means it's kind of just sitting there, but withdrawing it, I think we'll just take it. And did you second it?
Thank you for that, Ann.
I think Randy, did Randy second that?
You okay with that, Randy?
We'll withdraw that.
All right.
And I'm just wondering, yeah, maybe.
We'll withdraw
And
A
Lisa,
and,
you
we'll
can figure out
withdraw A and B.
where to go
for-
next.
We'll let the rest of the legislature know that on Tuesday that we're in debate. All right, thank you. Really, this is healthy and good, what we're doing here. Because I always quote Mark Twain when he said, put your money in real estate. They stopped making it a long time ago. In this case, it's location, location, location. And what this property has always been is near our campus. And Greg, yes, we could move out of our county seat. And we did that with the health department, which is already outside the county seat. But we've always tried to be committed to our downtown campus because of the access for all the people in the county. And that's, yes, we could, but I don't really see us moving our county center of government out to a cornfield somewhere where there's a lot of parking. That's what Tioga County.
Hey, don't talk about Trumansburg like that.
I'm talking Dryden too. Except we have, among the corn, we have jewels. Okay, let's let it go at that. Let's go to Roxanne. Roxanne, how's our airport doing?
Oh, we're working hard. We have a great team here, so thankful for that. I'm going to kind of go over like a couple of different items today, all relating to the same thing. As you're all aware, when the budget presentation was done by Lisa, the airport's going to be struggling. Next year, we're looking for some financial assistance. And at the recommendation of Lisa and with the help of Katie from planning and members on our air service board, myself and the staff, we got together and, threw together a strategic plan, recovery plan, I think more like it. And it's something that I'm going to view as a working document. There's a lot of information in there. There's some targets set. And many people, it's kind of difficult as you just went through. Not everybody has the same thoughts, same ideas. They all may be good ideas, but you just have to look at everything. I felt it was necessary to put the goals in there, something we can measure, something we can look at, something that may change, something that the goalpost may move back, may move forward. But I think we have to shoot for something. So we did that. And then, as we were talking, and I actually had spoke with Shauna, she indicated, what about, and this was also something that we brought up even back, when American was pulling out, looking at the possibility of hiring somebody, for, that does this professionally. So looking at a professional, organized, complete strategic plan over the next 5 years, that will go through in more detail than what we have been able to pull together. There may be other opportunities, other things that we can look at that we may have missed looking at as a group that put this together. So, I was thinking more about that. I think it's a great idea. We did a plan. We did an RFP actually back in 2019. And as you all know, completely different time. There was things that were looked at, things that were completed that needed to be done in this plan that was done by Recondo and Associates. Looked at a lot of our lease agreements. I went through them since I took over as director. We're working on the Teganic lease, our current T-Hanger leases, East Hill Flying Club, getting a cafe in, making sure that all tenants of the airport are treated fair and equal, that everybody's paying, what's required and what's needed, and that we're working together. So that was something that was done. But as you know, the pandemic hit, things have changed. So I've been looking and trying to figure out, okay, what would it cost to have a full-on strategic plan? So I've reached out to Recondo. I've reached out to Mike Boyd, who's a consultant we use on a minimal level that helps us with some air service. Both of those companies do strategic plans, looking at that. But I'm also going to reach out to some other airport directors that I know within New York State and outside of New York State that I've talked to, for many different things that are similar size to Ithaca, see if they've done a strategic plan, see what they're doing, try to get more information. As you all know, I'm a communicator. I like information. I like opportunities. I like to see what we can do. So I think if we put together an RFP, I think that's the best way to go. I don't think we should stick with, and this is just me personal, necessarily one of the vendors we currently work with. Because I think maybe we need to start thinking, maybe it's something different, something that somebody that might see something different. These companies may bid and they may be great. The plan, I think, would look at how do we recover? What are the best ways to recover the airport? My ultimate goal is to become self-sustaining again. I think that's something that's necessary, but I think it's something that's achievable. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think we have to work towards that. And I think to be able to achieve that, we need to work with a company that can give us as much information, as much opportunities as we possibly can to get there. And again, I think things will change, as we all know. I mean, the budget next year, if I'm the optimist too, that, if we get increased service, that'll increase the money we're getting in. It'll increase the money that we're going to need assistance with. I know, by asking for money, this plan, and I don't know what it's going to cost. So I think that's also something, that the ledge is going to want to, be involved in, which, will happen. But if it's something that's going to happen, it will adjust our budget. It will, need approval. And it will be something that would probably need to be funded by the county unless there's enough funding in our airport fund balance, which I'm, going to reach out to Rick after this and see, the status and everything going on with that. But that's just kind of where I'm at, kind of what's happening. There's a lot of information in the plan that we put together. A lot of work went into it in a very short period of time. And I think that's something that would still be usable. It's still information that's critical. And I'm a planner. I like organization. So this will help me. But I think a strategic plan done by a professional company will also help the overall airport in the county together.
So Roxanne, what you're suggesting is you think that would be a good step to move forward, and that you may need to ask for some funding for that. Could be, for example, an over target request. But we don't quite know what would have to be yet financially.
That's correct.
And so I guess looking to the other members of the committee to see what you think about this. Ann?
As I heard Roxanne talking, I thought of a couple of things. I wrote a couple notes down. The first one is that we hired the right person to help us right now with the airport. I mean, these unforeseen things, that happened with COVID, and now this dragging on with the pilot shortage. I mean, just things you couldn't predict, and which, cascades into a number of things with the pilot shortages. From what I'm hearing, if there were the planes there, we can fill them. And I've heard that over and over from you. So I really like the idea of going out and getting the RFP, because that to me is two things. It's showing that we're going to not just favor one company and give it to a company we're familiar with, just so that tells the community we're being fair and we're being cost effective. But also, as you said, we're looking at, we don't know what we don't know. People come back with some ideas that we hadn't thought of. I think that's the way to go, and I think it's humbling, but you say it with such confidence, but you're really being humble. Like you need help. The airport needs help. The county needs help with this. And I'm really impressed with the strategic plan that you came up with so far. I mean, there's going to be more when we get so I mean, I'm just really impressed with what I know administration, the legislature leadership, and you met, and if that helped come up with this. But I'm sure you took the lead on this, and so I think I feel like we're in good hands. Thank you.
Randy?
Yes, thanks, Roxanne. Yeah, I like the recovery strategy. It was a good read, and I think there's a lot of good things in there, and a good place to start. And I agree that some outside expert help, not that you're not an expert, but somebody that has dealt with these issues elsewhere makes a lot of sense.
Lee?
We've invested well over $20 million here in the last 6 or 7 years with the airport, and it was based on a whole different set of circumstances in the economy. And as I was always taught, strategic plans are a living, breathing document. They change on the circumstances. I don't think you have any choice but to take a look at where we're at today versus a few years ago and see what the future, what the other outside prognosticators may be able to tell us. And I appreciate the work you've done on this. You've responded at the time we need to see that.
Thanks.
Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. As a member of the Air Services Board, I just want to echo Ann and Lee's comments. I think we have the right team in place right now, and we would definitely benefit from, I think, some additional outside support to echo Lee's comments. And we do have a critical piece of infrastructure that we made a large investment in, and I think a small investment in strategic planning and making sure that we can protect that so that it's here for the long haul is a small amount and a worthwhile amount to protect what we've already invested in, because it is a key piece of infrastructure for our community and really the region, and hopefully we can bring it back to a level of pre-pandemic, and it'll take some time. It'll take the airlines and other community partners to play and see the value of Ithaca as a regional transportation hub. But I know we can do it. We've done it before, and I think I would definitely be supportive at the legislative level in further strategic planning and some additional outside professional resources. But I'm happy we have the people in place that we do.
Amanda.
Yeah, thanks, Roxanne, for all your work on this. I guess my thought is that sometimes strategic plans are very, touchy-feely. And I would hope that whatever, a consultant or, I would hope that what they come up with is very concrete, because I think that's what you need. You have the sort of, where you're going, what you need to do, but I guess, so I would hope for more of specifics. Here's, take these steps that will get you to X, take these steps that will get you to Y, So yeah, thank you for your work on this. I think you have a lot of good things in what you've already given us to start with. And I look forward to seeing what happens next.
Lisa, are you okay with this?
Absolutely.
Here's what I'm going to suggest. If you could get, working with Lisa, a dollar amount that's not $1 million, obviously, but a reasonable amount, and we can put that together as an over target request for our discussion at EBC later. I'd be glad to sponsor that OTR, and maybe others would want to join on with that as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. So I've reached out, so I should have a rough idea. And I think getting, with a few other airport directors, just getting an estimate of minimum, maximum, kind of what they've spent, what they've gotten. And then of course, once you go out for the proposals, things will come in and we would look at them and make a determination, based on where that's at. But I appreciate the support and the help through this. And looking forward to, moving forward and continuing to grow again.
Anything else you wanted to share with us this morning?
I think that's it this morning.
Any word at all about the state grants?
I just actually was going to think about that too. They actually announced yesterday Ithaca was not a recipient of any of the grant funding. Binghamton did get $32 million for their terminal. And so I think as part of the strategic plan, and I think too, I'm just making lists of things in my mind that's happening. And suggestion yesterday was, you know, looking at our UAI application, seeing what's in there, seeing what we can do, you know, for another grant application, or, you know, how we can, you know, work this, you know, into future plans. Some of the things we were doing. I know there was interest too of the site for the DMV for testing for CDLs. That was in the UAI grant. So I think we need to revisit that, because I think it's critical. You see signs everywhere that people need CDLs. So I think we need to look at, is there another way that we can do that without, you know, because we didn't get the grant. So there's tons of different strengths and opportunities and ways that we can know what needs to be done as a county as a whole, not just for the airport, but for everybody as a whole. I think working together on that would help the county with the CDL shortages and bus drivers and truck drivers.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's certainly disappointing to hear about the grant, but that CDL thing is so important. And I know at one point, Mike Hall said he had talked with some folks at DMV that thought there might be some funding available through them. I don't know whether that anything came of that or not, but it might be worth trying to ask them again, because we're not talking a huge amount of money for this.
Right. And I'll look into that too, Mike, and I'll look at what they were, you know, estimating. I'll pull up the grant application and just kind of see what the plan they had in there for that and see what the possibilities are. And also, just as part of our capital plan in 2024, we have our master plan happening, which is overseeing everything. So, you know, in the back of my mind, I just say here, because it just pulled up, I might actually look at, you know, talking with Lisa, you know, regarding this and seeing, is this something that we can incorporate part of the strategic plan into the master plan? If we, you know, if we move the master plan around, we'd get federal funding for it. And maybe some of that, you know, for the strategic plan could be part of the master plan. Just a thought. I'm just trying to think of saving funds and, you know, getting the best bang for the buck.
Thank you. Ann's got a question.
Actually, now what was my, I'll come back to it when I remember what it is.
Well, we're going to
Oh, I remember what it is. CDL. Thinking about, I know, I believe it was Travis, our colleague Travis Brooks had mentioned before, if that GAC had done some type of CDL program before. So I know they would like to at least be consulted in what they did, and maybe, or, you know, doing something together to make sure you know, that we're reaching out to diverse populations to help them as we're looking at filling these positions. So maybe Travis could fill you in on what they were doing.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
Okay, Roxanne, thank you very much. Appreciate your being here this morning.
Great, thank you guys.
Let's move on to Jeff. Jeff's been so patient waiting this morning. Come on up and have a chair. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what would you like to talk to us about? We got a resolution and
yeah, we have
summaries.
A resolution to a pretty standard resolution every 3 years to receive authorization to execute extensions of our snow and ice agreements that we have with the towns, 7 towns in Tompkins County. It's, as I said, fairly standard resolution. And as we...
Let's get it on the table. Somebody want to move it? Lee, seconded by Randy. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it's a pretty standard resolution. There's fairly low, very few issues with anything as far as snow and ice goes in the county. It's a system that's worked well. As everyone knows, there are price increases with diesel and salt, and the way our contracts work is that it's based off the actual year that we have our costs. If it's an open winter and we don't spend as much, or if it is a harsh winter and we do, or there's other variables as far as salt price and diesel price and things like that, and our costs, whatever our costs do, that percentage of increase or decrease is reflected on the year going forward as far as how we pay the towns. So I think, and I am not the developer of that plan, but it's one of the best I've seen in other snow and ice agreements that I've worked with. It does remain competitive. I think people are paid fairly through it. And like I said, we have very few issues with the towns. That's pretty much all I had to say. I'm not sure if there's any questions. I'd be happy to answer.
Questions? Shall we vote? Randy?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
The only other thing is a capital payment summary report. It's for information only, but certainly I'm here if there's any questions. Both payments, one is to the contractor Economy Paving, the other one is to the consultant Bartlett LaJudas, and they are both for the Etna Lane Bridge replacement. I think most of you are aware that the project has been moving along pretty well. Last week, they were able to set beams, the main stringers that run the span. And with that, they'll start forming and pouring, setting up to pour the concrete deck. There's by all indications that the bridge will be open according to the original schedule, end of October.
Thanks for keeping us advised about when that construction was taking place. And it was interesting because those beams came through the center of the village of Dryden, and they were big. And I wasn't able to get there in the morning to watch with you. I wish I could have, but I did drive by late in the afternoon, and they had 3 of them set, I think, and they were about ready to work on the next one the next day, I think.
Yeah.
And they are big beams. Have you been over to look at them, Greg?
I haven't been in a while since I've been in.
You ought to take a look. Anything else we need to talk to Jeff about?
Could I just, I noticed as I drive through Game Farm Road all the time, and I saw the announcement about the road closure. Could you just give a few minutes or a few seconds on what's going on there? And I think that
absolutely
was a pleasant surprise, maybe, hopefully, if it's the same work we're hoping it is.
Yeah, I think it's all in regards to some of the meetings we've been having with the town of Ithaca and the town of Dryden, and looking to connect that multi-use trail, East Ithaca Recreation Way, with the Dryden Rail Trail. The efforts that we're putting forth now were originally planned up until a week ago for early next spring. A report identified a non-standard vertical curve just north of the trail crossing that created a unsafe safe stopping distance. And by us removing that's one step in the process. There's a few more that we need to get through. But recognition of our hardworking employees and the weather we've had this summer, we've been able to really get a lot of work done. And we were at a point where we could start looking at our fall work and, the roads and the sections of roads that we typically would be doing in our maintenance paving program. This being already scheduled for next year, and with the other priorities, we pulled it in front of everything else, and brought in some resources, and we're able to remove the vertical curve. It'll be paved and everything this winter. And then, so the rest of the work will be more directly with the towns, and creating as safe as a crossing as we can out there.
So if we were able to do this, or we're going to be able to do it with our own forces. Like at one point you talked about possibly having a contractor do it.
We have a contractor through a services agreement that does help us with some of the equipment and some manpower, and we are coordinating. But also it's a group effort. We're working with that contractor ourselves. We're doing some of the grade control and design. And then we're going to have, when there's any trucking needed or other things, the town of Dryden and the town of Ithaca will also be helping us out.
That's great. See everybody working together on this, and we certainly appreciate your efforts and the meeting we had, I guess it was last week, with the town, and I think we made a lot of progress, and I think everybody got on the same page with where we were going, but this is just great news.
it's good. And again, it's credit to the employees of the highway department that were able to get to it this year for sure. Thanks.
Else for Jeff this morning? Jeff, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Nice meeting in face to face.
Well, there'll be more of the same, I hope.
Yeah.
Let's do the minutes. Someone want to move them? Ann, seconded by Amanda. Any discussion on the minutes? Let's vote. I guess we can vote by hands, actually. That's unanimous. I just wanted to mention one thing. I did attend the joint ITCTC Policy Planning Committee meeting yesterday, and the day before, I forget. They've gotten a relatively small grant of $92,000 for carbon reduction. And there's going to be a process where I guess the different municipalities are going to be able to apply for funding from that. Now, obviously with $92,000, it's not going to be a lot of grants, but they're looking up at this point, Fernando, what the requirements are and what kind of projects could be funded. For example, you know, I said, could they fund charging stations, for example? And he said yes, and there were other things that they could do. So I just thought I would pass that on. Most of what we do is those meetings are amendments, changing the tip when we get grant money in, and putting different projects on the transportation improvement plan, the tip. Is there anything else we need to talk about today? I'm most surprised we're going to get through 4 minutes early. Lisa, thank you for being here. It's always a help. Let's adjourn.
Thanks, Mike. Go next door.